The world of Kayfabe. Stories within the wrestling world manifest themselves as true. Stories that include supernatural activity, horrifically tasteless events, and one time, a 77-year-old woman gave birth to a hand. Death, crime, and other powerful circumstances surround the wrestling industry, as told by the wrestling industry on weekly television and pay-per-view events. But how bad are these circumstances? That's where I come in, the purveyor of truth, to find out what is right and what is wrong in Kayfabe.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of In Kayfabe. Here I'm joined with Ref Marsh from Wrestling on the Rocks. You can catch that on YouTube and all streaming platforms you usually find podcasts on. Ref Marsh, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me here, dude. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you for the first time
Yeah.
ever.
Cheers. Cheers to you.
Sure. I've got an empty plastic water bottle, so
That counts.
yeah.
Oh, you signed it even. That's a collectible.
My mom's boyfriend signed it. Actually, it is not a collectible.
You want it? Since we're on the topic real fast, I actually have. I don't know if you listened to Taz's podcast back in the day. I got him to sign a water bottle that says H2O Jones from his water breaks.
It's very funny. But it's hey, I'm supposed to be funny on this show, not you. So Ref March, tell us about yourself and how you got into wrestling.
How I got into wrestling actually goes back. My good friend Kevlar, who also co-hosts the Tuesday show of it records live on Tuesday. If you go to wrestlingonrocks.com, all of our links are there. The Tuesday show is typically me and Kevlar, and that's how I got started. Kevlar, when I was a kid, was in middle school with me, and we just hit it off. We just clicked. I would go to his house, and he was constantly watching wrestling. He got into it because of his grandma. She would watch it with him, and so he had at the time, black boxes was the thing to have if you were a kid, where you got the free pay-per-views. So every pay-per-view, I'd go over to his house and we'd watch them, and then it just became more and more. This was like early 90s. I want to say I have vague memories of watching the Razor Shawn ladder match. Mm-hmm. And then it gets real vague there. And then I really remember like Steve Austin and $1 Million Man and that time frame. So I feel like I wasn't watching weekly up until about then, but I was watching like pay-per-views in between, you know? But that's how I got into it. Just with Kev going over there and watching it all the time. And now we just do a podcast where we talk about wrestling all the time because we're both back into it fully.
So you left wrestling for a little bit. What's it like? So like, when did you get back into wrestling?
So I had quite a gap. I remember as I was getting to the later years of my teenage years, I remember thinking specifically that the hot lesbian action stuff was, to me, for whatever reason, seemingly awfully juvenile, and I was not interested in the stupidness of it. But I do remember specifically the Kiss My Ass Club being a big point of contention for me. And I remember watching Undertaker shove Jim Ross's face into Vince McMahon's ass. And I remember being like, I'm not watching this. And I just turned it off. It took a long time for me to come back. I was like tuning in from time to time. I remember seeing Batista in a couple of the shows and just being like, okay, I see what this is, and turned it off. I remember seeing a little bit of CM Punk and being like, not interested. I remember some of John Cena and just being like, okay, I guess they're just kind of doing what they do. But it wasn't until I was living in New York and a number of people I was working with, because we would talk wrestling, because I still really liked, it sounds weird, but even though I wasn't actively watching, I would still listen to the old albums of wrestling entrances, their music. And so I would be in the repair room where we're fixing computers and stuff, and my playlist would typically be wrestling entrances from the 90s and stuff, and early 2000s. And they all were getting tickets for SummerSlam. It was SummerSlam 2017, I think. It was the one with the Universal title, Finn Balor versus Seth.
2016.
And they were all getting tickets for that. And I remember that this was during the time when WWE Network had their, sign up now, get the first 3 months free. And I was like, you know what? If they're all going, I'll just watch what they're going to watch so I can talk to them about it, So I got the network and I watched that takeover. And I remember watching that takeover before the SummerSlam. And I specifically remember watching Asuka and Bayley and going, whoa. I remember texting a friend of mine who I wasn't even sure if he was there or not, just being like, yo, women's wrestling is different. Have you seen these two? And the dude was like, oh yeah, 100%. Because it's a dude who I knew who liked wrestling. That one changed me when I was like, okay, women's wrestling is something you can't really be missing anymore. This is next level. Then you get to SummerSlam. By the time we get to Finn and Seth, I'm like, holy cow, this is all different. I was like, I can't miss this stuff. And I started watching from then on, and I just haven't missed a show since.
That's awesome. My first WWE Network 1 month free thing was Money in the Bank 2016.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to see John Cena versus AJ Styles, like a lot.
Yo, and that Rumble, I know that people talk about the SummerSlam AJ and Cena because AJ wins, but realistically, the Rumble AJ Cena 16th win, I don't think it's talked about enough. That's one of the episodes that, as I was showing my girlfriend wrestling and trying to explain why I liked it, I put on that match and was like, let me break down this match to you from a psychology standpoint and let you see what I'm seeing. And the AJ Cena match is so classically put together. It's so easy to go through and say, like, see, here's where this changes. Here's where this is happening. And like, it was amazing. Open up everything to her now too. And then obviously breaking down that stuff, she would come with me to actually Kev's house to watch pay-per-views over there because we would just have pay-per-view watch parties. And while we're watching it there, she was like listening to the conversations that we're having about it. We would call each other every day and break down wrestling on this like minute level. And she was like, Kev too was like, hey, why don't we record this and just put it out there? Like, I mean, these are interesting conversations that people aren't having. Like, let's just have them. That's kind of how we got rolling with Wrestling on the Rocks.
Which is it's a great title for a podcast.
Yeah. I loved it so much I trademarked it right away. I was all like, this is good.
That's really good. Boulder Wrestling. So I'm gonna say this before. Disclaimer: this is not a legal show. This is entertainment only. We are not lawyers here.
No. I have no legal background.
So in saying that, as a lawyer, I have looked at no.
As a certified lawyer under the state of
as somebody who has a MD in lying, I have found 3 kayfabe transgressions in the world of wrestling that myself and Ref Marsh are going to look at. One past, one present, one future. We're just going to break it down for you in simple terms, legal terms, socio-political terms, geopolitical terms, whatever you want to do it. We'll talk about it. So let's travel back to the past. Welcome to the past. It's been a bit. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about on the November 11th, 1999 episode of WWF SmackDown. The Big Bossman crashed the funeral of the Big Show Paul White's father's funeral and stole a casket. Now, Big Show, of course, jumped on top of it to, stop his father's casket to be from being stolen, but to no avail. And unfortunately, nothing happened to the Big Boss Man until now.
Yeah, it's a really weird situation in the WWE universe. The lack of legal ramifications for any given action is remarkable. Yeah, it's unfortunate if nothing else. And for a place, speaking of them already, that already had the Big Boss Man, you've already got police force on the roster. Right. How could you not hold anybody accountable? It just seems like the Big Boss Man missed his mark there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Did you have in front of you where that SmackDown took place?
So this is important. This is pre-taped. And the Big Show built from Tampa, Florida. So I use Florida as a thing because maybe he was built from Tampa, Florida. Maybe he grew up in Tallahassee. Maybe he grew up in Palm Beach. Maybe he grew up in Tallahassee.
Okay. I was not sure where it was coming from. I
Mhm.
know that graveyard is in Connecticut, so I was looking at Connecticut as a potential location for those issues. Now, I will say, Florida versus Connecticut versus wherever it is makes it a possibility of a federal crime if this guy's crossing state lines with the body.
Right. So I used Florida state laws because those are while Connecticut state laws are fine. I'm using Florida state laws because since the Big Show is there, I think he would file in Florida, living in Florida.
Potentially, you can file where you live. You can also file where the injunction happened,
That
depending
is
on where
true.
his dad is from.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So, I mean, I say we take it from both sides. What's culpable for in Florida? What is it culpable for in Connecticut? And is there a greater federal transgression, as it were?
So, my internet history is being flagged because I looked up, I looked up, punishment for grave robbing. Which,
I used a VPN because I was looking up dead body repercussions and stuff, and I was like, well, stealing a dead body was one of the things I Googled, and I was like, well, I hope they like watching me from here on out.
Yeah, I would love to. I can't wait to be on the list. It's okay. It's okay. We're using the law in our favor.
It's all right. So I also always live my life like the NSA is always watching, and I imagine they love watching me eat chicken wings and watch wrestling. So
my FBI agent either thinks I'm the funniest person alive or the most boring individual of all time.
100%. Whoever's assigned to me, they're miserable.
They're either having a great time, they're just like, you got to check out this guy, or they're just like, please do something other than watch Netflix.
Yeah, stop.
Title 46, Chapter 872 of Florida state law states that any person who willingly and knowingly disturbs, destroys, removes, vandalizes, or damages an unmarked human burial is guilty of a felony of the third degree, punishable as provided in Section 775. Doesn't matter because I'll tell you about that later. It also states any person who has knowledge that an unmarked human burial is being disturbed, vandalized, or damaged and fails to notify the local law enforcement agency with jurisdiction in the area where the unmarked human burial is located is guilty of a misdemeanor of the second degree, punishable as provided by same thing.
No.
So this involves a couple things because Big Bossman strapped the casket, dragged it away, because a casket apparently is an unmarked burial site because it has not been marked yet.
And it encases a dead body.
Yes.
That's awesome because see, here's where I was getting caught up.
That's actually not awesome. That's dead body legal team. That's not awesome that a dead body got stolen.
That's fantastic. It's fantastic news. Actually, in a former position I had where we would work on, we worked customer facing with broken devices. And one of the things they always said is when you ask people to explain their issue, never respond with cool, we can fix that. It's like, no, it's not cool. It's broken. Yeah. But with that in mind, I was trying to go off of the technicalities, the specificness of it. Is it a burial site if it's not buried yet? If there has been not sand applied, is it? So what I looked up was in Connecticut, the removal of a dead body, removal of body of deceased person, as it was in Title 7 Municipalities, Chapter 93, Registrars of Vital Statistics, Section 769, removal of body of deceased. So it says no person except a licensed embalmer or funeral director, licensed by the department or licensed in the state, having a reciprocal agreement on file with the department and complying with the terms of such agreement shall remove the body of a deceased person, except that once the body of a deceased person has been embalmed or prepared in accordance to the public health. So I was concerned that maybe it wouldn't be considered grave robbing if the grave was never enclosed. So knowing that there's potential technicalities, I say we would mark them with both. Not only did you remove a dead body, but now the casket is also a burial ground.
Yeah, I would say because it's in a cemetery, a dead body outside, traditionally, if a dead body is outside, it's going to be put in the grave. So
going to be, but it's not.
But it's not yet, but that's the intent of it. It's not there hanging out. It's not there catching a tan. It's there to be put into the grave.
I think that would be the implied intent, but then you're also looking at what's the implied intent after the removal of the body. Is this to be disposed of the body? You know what I mean? Because there's a disposal of deceased as well. So depending on what happens to the body after the fact, I think there was also something along the lines of, let's see, disposal of bodies. And I think I thought I saw something about a ransom potentially, like depending on how you treat the body once you steal it. There's a few more things that can go there. Extortion, for one. I was thinking you could probably also tack on grand theft.
Absolutely.
The caskets. Yeah.
The caskets are thousands of dollars. Even the cheapest ones. It's got to be at least $2,500. Editor put it up here how much it is. Thank you. And I think it's totally grand theft. Because also the suit being worn by thing and any accessory on the cadaver. Yes.
Yeah. Also punitive damages, emotional damages. You know what I mean? You just wrecked this mid-ceremony, and the amount of ground that was destroyed, potentially, I recall, I did not double check. I do think a tombstone or two was disturbed along the way. So punitive damages could be tacked on as well. Emotional distress would be the easiest thing. There's no way someone could contest emotional distress.
Right. That's a civil court thing, though.
Oh, that's true.
That have to go to civil court. You can't sue somebody for that as a criminal charge. But totally the civil suit for emotional distress.
And I'll tell you, there's no way this is not going to both. You know?
Right. Absolutely. This is totally going to both.
Burial expenses is something you can charge someone with.
Now, my question is, while this is all nice, does Big Bossman being a former law enforcement officer help him in any way, either with judges or with, anything else? Yeah, because maybe Big Bossman also knows a few judges in Connecticut/Florida. And they have to remove themselves potentially, or it goes to a mistrial, and mistrials never end well.
That, and realistic, if he were to be sentenced, being a former corrections officer, he would have to be in protective custody. He wouldn't be allowed to be in the public population, general population.
Right. Which is, taxpayer money. So it's another thing to think about.
Yeah. For sure.
There'd obviously be a grand jury for this amount of charges as well.
Yes. To figure out which ones you could stick and which ones you couldn't, for sure.
Yeah. And then potentially sequestering a jury.
Yeah.
Which takes other resources.
I mean, it would help the case that there was live televised footage of the incident in play.
I think that's main evidence. And then there's emotional testimonies. There's eyewitness testimonies of everything.
Not to mention that the live footage included a lower third with the person's name on it to be like, hey, in case you didn't know, this is who is committing the crime right now.
It's true. Now, I brought up Section B because are all fans and viewers in attendance of that program, both live and on television, should they be charged with knowing that this happened? They didn't report anything.
They definitely couldn't be cited as a witness because they're watching footage.
Right.
But are they all culpable in the event of not reporting it? I would think that would fall on key editors and the production team, right? Yeah. If USA televised it or UPN, I don't remember where SmackDown was at the time. If UPN televised it, those producers would be responsible for saying, hey, we were filming something live and a crime was committed during that filming.
All right. This is a tough one. So would you say that Big Bossman is guilty on all counts? Which ones would you have guilty? Which ones do you think he's not guilty? I think he's guilty for everything. Every crime.
Definitely guilty for burial expenses.
Mm-hmm.
definitely guilty for the civil case of emotional distress. I think the ones that we would have to see, would the court would decide, would be the things like removal of a body versus burial of or grave robbing. You know what I mean? Like, was it officially a grave robbing or was this removal of a body? I think that's where you would take the grand jury into account. Did he just remove a dead body from a grave site, or did he, in essence, rob the grave as well? Because I do think that those hold different punishments.
It's true. So any person who willingly and knowingly disturbs, destroys, removes, vandalizes, or damages an unmarked human burial is guilty of a felony of the third degree. A felony of the third degree is 5 years imprisonment. Now, he did remove the thing, but you said he removed the casket, but you also said he destroyed some graves. That's triple whammy right there.
Potentially, and removal of a dead body is much less of a sentence than that. So it could even be that the lawyer could try to petition to get it to removal of a body instead of the grave robbing, because that's a federal offense. Where with the removal of a body, it says any person who violates any provision of the section, who knowingly signs a false permit or knowingly allows a false permit to be in lieu of permit required by the section, because it's all about permits, if you're allowed to move the body or not.
Right. Which Big Bossman is not an embalmer. He's never mentioned that before.
Correct. It says shall be fined no more than $500 or in prison not more than 6 months or both. Right. So I could see them trying to petition to say it was removal of a body. It was, silly. Let's not give him more than a 6-month sentence.
And all those producers, it would say it's a second degree misdemeanor. So it's no more than 60 days in prison. Exactly.
So I could see where you'd want to take this to a grand jury and say, we want to hit him with the grave robbing, because technically a casket is a grave and it's a federal offense. Where I could see the defending attorney saying, let's bring it down to removal of a body to try and get him off on less time so he can be back for Hell in a Cell.
It's true. It's true, which is bad. Because nobody should go to hell ever.
That's a good point. I don't think things panned out for Bossman very well at Hell in a Cell.
It's Survivor Series.
Memory serves.
Survivor Series. It was a 4-on-1 against the Big Show with Big Bossman and against Big Bossman and other nefarious people, I bet.
Fair enough.
It was not received well, if you can tell, but that's because nobody talks about anything else of this feud besides this one infamous moment. Let's move out of the past. Let's push. Yeah. Let's push to the present. Let's push to today. Hey, welcome back to today. How was your trip back 95 years? What was I don't know how long 1999 was.
The snacks were good.
I don't do math. August 3rd, 2020, a nefarious group of thugs attacked and dismantled part of the WWE Thunderdome, held, of course, in Florida. I want to say it's in Tampa now, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
It was the first iteration of the Thunderdome.
Tampa. Is that Tampa? Performance Center, I think, is Tampa. Now you got me mixed up. I thought I knew exactly where it was.
I thought it was in Orlando, the PC.
Right, Full Sail's in Orlando. Thunderdome was in Tampa.
Sure.
But it was in the Performance Center at the time of the Retribution.
It's in Florida. It's okay. It's in Southern Florida. Yeah. It's all the same.
Good point.
These nefarious people hacked Thunderdome screens, destroyed physical property of World Wrestling Entertainment.
They cut, was it one rope with a chainsaw?
I would say that's a pretty nefarious act, if you ask me. No one gets a chainsaw out in the middle of a ring to propose.
They did more damage than Chainsaw Charlie did with that thing.
It's true. They did more damage than Dean Ambrose did at WrestleMania 32. Fun fact. And you know what they also did? Extortion. They kept saying, "Give us contracts."
Yes. Absolutely.
Which was, why would anybody want to work? Ugh, that's why I love making my free government wage off my expensive law and finance degree.
Oh, 100%. I love the idea too that we hate this company so bad we want to work for it.
Mm-hmm. We think we can change it. They're really social justice people, outsiders.
Yeah. They were going to come in and make a change, supposedly. Now, here's the deal. I was looking up computer fraud and abuse because there's Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, there's Computer Fraud, or the Stored Communications Act, Electronic Communications Privacy Act, and the Defend Trade Secrets Act, which all encompass different various motions of hacking.
Right.
Some of those included national security stuff, which clearly was not an issue here.
Right.
There was this one which I thought maybe they could get accessing a computer to defraud and obtain value. They might be trying to access the Thunderdome, taking control, trying to devalue, almost in reverse, obtaining value by destruction. Accessing a computer and obtaining information. Now, the defraud holds 5 years, 5 to 10 years. Accessing a computer and obtaining information in general is 1 to 5, 10 years max. And then obviously for second convictions it goes higher. This is the one I think that they would likely get, though. Intentionally damaging by knowing transmission. They would get 1 to 10 years on that. Like, they knew the transmission, they knew how to access it and intentionally damage the production of it to make their statement. So I think they would definitely get that, and potentially extortion involving computers, which is a 5 years max. So if you did 1 to 10 and 5, you can maybe get consecutive or concurrent. And
I think the DA, the issue would be, would you count the whole Thunderdome as one computer, or each individual of the 1,000 LED screens in that iteration of the Thunderdome to be an individual computer? Because they did hack every single individual screen. So would that be its own computer?
No, they would have hacked the intranet of the network that's local. Yeah, the intranet, the local network, is what they would have hacked, and they would have then therefore had access to all computers. They wouldn't have had to do them individually. If you had to access them all individually, maybe, but you only had to get access to the local network.
So I have it down that penalties for criminal mischief. I think that they would easily get criminal mischief, which is it depends on the value, but where the amount of damage of property exceeds $1,000 is a third-degree felony punishable up to 5 years imprisonment.
Depending on how much of the ring they damaged, it could get there. A good ring, a ring that's WWE quality, is an easy 10 grand.
Well, also the power transmitter from the outside that they were throwing Molotov cocktails at.
They did do that. And that would have set off a lot.
Yeah, which is also dangerous. Also, this is a group conspiracy.
Yeah, reckless endangerment for sure.
Yeah, this is a group, but this is a group effort. This is like close
conspiracy to commit.
I maybe not this far, but a good DA would try for domestic terrorism.
Domestic terrorism, but it wasn't on a national level. It was against a company specifically. Is a terrorist act against one specific entity?
But the Thunderdome emanating from the Performance Center, which is a part of the Full Sail University, a public college, if I'm not mistaken.
But the college was shut down at the time.
But true, but still a public place. So it wasn't like they were attacking a headquarters. Like they were
attacking it after hours and during a closed quarantine. You wouldn't have been. They would have knowingly not endangered lives.
They also were breaking curfew for quarantine.
They were 100% breaking curfew.
How could they do that?
Yeah, guys, go inside.
Go inside. But they weren't wearing masks.
I think you could get them on racketeering. Right. Because racketeering is just general nefarious badness. It's the most generalized gang activity you can give. You guys conspired to do bad things.
I mean, true. I mean, that's what we got Godzilla on.
Yeah. I mean, they got Capone on tax evasion. They couldn't even cop him on racketeering, which was real weird. They're like, what? He was the king of bad stuff.
Right. Well, when you Godzilla, Capone, the worst of the worst.
But what a tag team. Talk about mega powers.
No, talk about, hey, God 0-1 in WWE tag team wrestling. Godzilla and Al Capone, undefeated. Never lost.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Although there was a lot of discussion on whether or not God got his win back at WrestleMania this past year with the reign.
That's a good point. I think that God, I think that he caused interference. I wouldn't say that interference is getting a win back though, because the show still went on. I think if WrestleMania Night 1 was rained out, then God would have gotten the win. But half an hour delay, I don't think.
I think Vince got the win on that. I'd give it 0-2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God's slipping in the tag division. He needs to step back. Yeah. And you would think, like, with a wrestler like Shawn Michaels, that Shawn Michaels and God would have a shot, but no.
You'd think on paper, you go, yeah, that team's got it going, but hey, they don't deliver on game time. They just don't deliver. But that's what I had for the computer stuff. I think they would get a lot more probably for the computer hacking than the actual physical damages.
Absolutely, because it happened more than once.
Yes,
because
although all they really did was access stuff. They, even when you go back before Retribution, when it was the hacker that Mustafa copped to doing, he didn't do anything but pull security footage and then play it.
But isn't that tampering?
Yeah, for sure. It's tampering, and it's not extortion.
I think Mustafa gets his own set of. I think he's like part of the group, so it's kind of like a Chicago 7 kind of thing.
Yes,
like they're all part of it, but Mustafa has additional court cases to go to.
Yeah,
he's kind of the Bobby Seale of the group, if you will.
Yeah, and there's a good chance the rest of Retribution folds over on and rolls over on Mustafa.
Right, they might, they might say some stuff, have an easier sentence.
Yeah, 100%.
If they comply.
I think the other guys 100% roll on him and say, "Hey, yeah, it was all him. That's what he wanted. I don't even know how he did it. I was just there."
Yeah, I heard Slapjack was a wire, anyways. So.
Oh, that would make sense, actually.
No.
And his mask was way different. It was like almost like an amplifier for sound.
And one of them even left. There was 2 women, and then there was 1 woman.
Yeah, never got named, I don't think, before they were gone.
Right, but
yeah,
good for them for getting out of there.
Hey, if you just realize you're in bad company, you got to go. Sometimes you say, "Hey, I got to turn my life around."
It's true. I think they're definitely gonna subpoena that unnamed person, though.
Yes.
Like, why'd you leave? Because they did it like once or twice. So they're still gonna get in trouble, just like far less trouble.
Yeah, 100%. They're gonna take some sort of easy sentence.
Uh-huh.
They'll get some sort of a accessory or some sort of
they
like
might
you said,
get accessory
knowledge. Yeah, or one of those ones where it's like you have knowledge of, but you don't turn them in. I forget what that one is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, something along those lines for sure.
That's true. So you're saying,
but outside of that one event, they didn't destroy anything else. At that point, it was all computer stuff.
Right.
So,
and computer laws in Florida, they're pretty extensive, but like they need to be specific.
Yeah.
The computer crime is charged as a felony in the 3rd degree, punishable for up to 5 years in Florida State Prison. The offense can be charged as a 2nd degree felony if the violation also damages a computer equipment or supplies, a computer system or a computer network, and the damage is or loss is at least $5,000. Now, this was in the middle of a pandemic, so WWE stocks did dip a little bit, but that might be outside things. It's possible that Retribution is a reason for low WWE stocks.
It could, if you think that the owner, if the main production is unable to maintain on the level, if they're getting infiltrated, it could definitely shake confidence in the company. You know what I mean? They're losing their wheels here. Anyone's getting in, they're able to destroy their stuff. How secure is this? How secure is my own personal data within this company if amongst them is hackers who have extorted them for a contract? And if they're willing to fold over and give a contract to somebody who destroyed so much property, what's to say they're going to do anything to protect anything else, So I could see people pulling out saying, hey, this seems a little bit unsure, unstable. They seem a bit easy to fold under pressure.
Yeah, so actually WWE stock the next day went down almost a whole $1, and it continued to go down into October as Retribution was hacking up. It went down significantly, almost $10 in stock, approximately $7.50 per WWE stock. So there is a possibility. All right, well, let's get out of the past, let's travel into the future. Isn't it neat being all futury and stuff, and everything costs like a little more, I guess?
Yeah, I can barely afford this place now.
Yeah.
I was living comfortably last time we talked. At this point, I don't know.
It is wild how much stuff has changed in the. But so this future topic, a little dark. It's okay. So eventually, Vince McMahon is going to have to retire, right? Whether that through choice or not. He is no longer going to eventually be the owner and chairperson of World Wrestling Entertainment. There is a 3 to 4 prong hold on the company underneath him between his wife Linda, his son Shane, and his daughter and son-in-law Stephanie McMahon and Triple H Paul Levesque. What happens to WWE afterwards?
Now, if we're talking kayfabe storyline, then we're talking about return of Shane.
We're talking real life, because kayfabe is real life.
That's a good point. But we have to go back and think about when Shane McMahon made his return after 8 years after leaving. He comes back and he starts talking about how under the tutelage of Vince, Stephanie, and Triple H have tanked the ratings, how things are worse than they've ever been, and how he wanted to take back over one of the shows. He ends up in a match with Undertaker. He ends up losing and somehow still gaining control of SmackDown. But you end up seeing more and more this power struggle between Shane and Triple H and Stephanie. One of the things I don't think can be discounted is during that time when Shane was in SmackDown, Shane had quite the issue with Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, to the point where Kevin Owens even puts up a career match for the ladder match, and says, if I win, you're out of the WWE. I think what we find out at this time is when Shane comes back, Triple H turns out to have been behind all of that. The Triple H had Kevin Owens being a menace to Stephanie, or not to Stephanie, but to Shane, even so much as when you see the moment that Kevin Owens headbutts Vince McMahon and frog splash him, as he's leaving the ring, Stephanie walks over to him and says something to Kevin's face, and he just looks down and away, and he pulls his own hair. Kevin Owens, if you rewatch any of that, looks frustrated and controlled by an outside entity. I think what you end up with Shane recruiting Kevin Owens to help him get rid of Triple H, because this whole time Triple H was the man behind Kevin, starting from the time he put him in the Universal title.
Yeah, he's the reason that Kevin Owens won. He pedigreed Seth Rollins.
Yep. And that's where he takes him in the back and says, I've got a future for you if you stay with me. Now, eventually Triple H throws Kevin Owens aside for Seth Rollins, and Kevin Owens doesn't like that. Kevin eventually goes his own way, and that's where we are now. But in the future, you end up with Shane coming out saying, I'm taking control, and Triple H saying, you're in no place to take control. And then you have Kevin Owens coming out saying, you want to talk about control? I'm done being controlled by you. Because he comes out potentially to turn on Triple H, where Triple H thinks he's coming out to attack Shane, but he doesn't. He attacks Triple H. Now you have Kevin Owens and Triple H in a retirement match, and Shane McMahon watching the whole thing.
I think Stephanie McMahon versus Shane McMahon in a ladder match at a SummerSlam for the custody of the WWE, harkening back of course, to 2000 in the custody of Dominic Mysterio, Guerrero, whatever you want to call him.
You could call it a majority shares match. That
Right.
briefcase hold the majority shares.
Right. But the objective is to climb the ladder and retrieve item, whether it be a check, whether it be a ring.
Or whether it be a pink slip that you hand to the other person.
Oh,
You're fired.
That's yeah. Maybe it's that says we wish you well in your future endeavors.
Future endeavor match.
Yes. Oof. Wouldn't you be hated to be future endeavored? I know I would.
Right. But I could see it being a 2-part thing. You have Stephanie versus Shane in one match in one night, and you also have Triple H versus KO in one match one night.
Maybe really it's a Triple H controlling Kevin Owens, but it's Stephanie controlling Triple H.
Yeah.
So it's a real puppet master's puppet master.
Yeah. 100%.
You got to get to the big. You beat like the medium boss. You got to fight the big boss, which is Stephanie, whose slap stuns most men twice her size.
That's a good point. She got a hell of a slap. And I do think that if you pull back, I actually cut together a video like a year ago. It's on my YouTube somewhere. It says, I think it's called KO versus Triple H or something, or retires Triple H. And I found all this old footage of Stephanie and Triple H talking about Vince during a different time frame. And I do think there's a story that's there already of Triple H and Stephanie trying to undermine Vince and get him out of the way. But when eventually they can't, they just go ahead and side with him. And then it feels like all this little stuff that goes against Vince all the time could be the prodding of Triple H and Stephanie underlying for them to get to a point where you could do something like that.
Or maybe it's all three of them versus Kevin Owens, and Kevin Owens in support of the fans versus management. It's more of a blue collar, white collar kind of thing. Maybe it's a series of matches. Maybe it's first Kevin Owens has to pick like a representative to face Stephanie McMahon at like Night of Champions, in like a gold paper match. And the gold paper, if you get the gold paper, you get to face Shane McMahon in a ladder match for 50% of WWE. So it's his 50% versus the other 50%.
And I do think that you could even easily have Shane and Triple H against Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, because I mean they maybe fight forever, but they're also going to fight for the fans forever too, right?
You could also have Triple H and Shane McMahon versus Kevin Owens in a handicap ladder match, harkening back to King of the Ring 99 against Steve Austin for control of the WWE, and it's a nice little parallel symmetry there.
Yeah. I think you could do a few things in there to figure out who's going to take control at the end of it all. But I do think that, I mean, Vince can't last forever, as cyborg as he seems to be. I do wonder what they're going to do to set that up long term for that legacy to just live on. Because there's no way WWE, regardless of as many people as online want WWE somehow to fail or fold, I think that there is a part of WWE that just will live on forever. It's too ingrained. So, I don't know. I do think that Kevin Owens plays a role. I think Shane and Triple H are involved in there. I think that's how you tell that story.
Maybe it's the comeback of DX. First time since 2009, 2010 that they've ever wrestled.
Which also would be super fair just because Triple H and Shawn are running NXT.
Right.
And Xbox not been quiet about his involvement with NXT from time to time. You know, so, and Road Dogg clearly has been involved heavily in NXT for a good chunk. There's no reason to think that DX would not come out and help Triple H.
Right. Oof. Be a big one.
Yeah.
Could return Hornswoggle.
Yeah, it could be the return of Sting.
Could be. Ooh. Sting versus a DX virus travels throughout the WWE. And Sting is the only one because he's seen this before.
Yeah, he's been through this. He's not going to do it again. You know,
and he has history with Triple H, and he does need that win back.
And you can have Flair show up. Sting comes in to do the thing, and Flair comes over trying to convince Sting, you don't know what you're doing. Trust me, it's for the best. And Sting's like, you've been brainwashed by it all. They've put so many rings on your fingers, you don't know what's right or wrong anymore.
DX versus Sting and Randy Orton, who has seen this vicious Triple H before.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think there's a few ways you could do it.
There is. There sure is. Well, thank you, Marsh, for being with us. Please tell us all about your show, where we can find you, anything else you want to plug.
Yeah, we're Wrestling on the Rocks, man. WrestlingOnTheRocks.com. If you go there, you can find all of our links to all of our spots. If you go to Wrestling on the Rocks on Instagram, there's a little link on top that has all of our links there too. We're trying to get to 100 subscribers on YouTube just so we can change the URL to also be /Wrestling on the Rocks. You can't have a custom URL without 100 subscribers, and we're so close. So anybody here who doesn't mind giving us a hand, giving us a sub, I always say put the I in subscribe and the no in notifications. You don't have to come back, but you can still be a hero and give us a subscribe like a tip jar. So if you do that for us, we'd really appreciate it. I'm at Ref Marsh. We are at WOTR The Show, and you can find us all the time there. I'm also doing, at this point, editing for Pro Wrestling for Life, X-Pac Sean Waltman's new podcast. So support them, and it supports us as well. And we appreciate that too. And I think you'll be really surprised and delighted with a lot of the interviews he does have over there. I think a lot of them on paper, I don't think sound as impressive as they turn out to be. I think they're always good and they always sound like they're going to be decent. And then when you hear them, there's always stuff that comes out that to me is absolutely incredible. And I don't know why more people aren't talking about it, if I'm being honest.
I know I'm talking about it. I know I've recently subscribed over on the old audio podcast train.
Absolutely, man. We appreciate that. And I think that it's a fun time. So give us a hang over there. Hang with us over on Wrestling on the Rocks. We host 2 times a week. It's just a hangout. It's not some sort of insider podcast where we're trying to break the mold. We're just a couple of dudes and women as well. The producer's a woman. And on Thursdays, we have Amanda Jane just hanging out, having drinks, talking wrestling because we love it so much. It's just fun to talk about and speculate and have a good time with it. And we never forget that we're watching it because we enjoy it. We're not watching it because we hate it. And we're not trying to get people to hate more. We're trying to get people to love it more. So that's what we're doing.
Well, for all of us here at specifically Devoid and in Kayfabe, I've been me. You've been you. I'll see you next time.
Cheers.
All right, man. Before you go, can you just join Coalition and just we need members and we got dues to do and stuff. Can we just
I've definitely heard a lot about the Coalition. And the thing about the Coalition is, as much as I would love to join, I'd be more in love with destroying it, because at the end of the day, brother, I am Pink World Order for life.